If you want to get started playing lead guitar, then you've clicked on the right video, because I'm going to show you the easiest way to dive right into it. And the method we use today may not be what you think it is, but be sure to stick around to the end of the lesson because I've got a free gift for you and your guitar that you're going to love. Alright, now let's talk about how to approach playing lead guitar. Now you may have heard that in order to start playing lead guitar, the first thing you have to learn are scales. Well, we're not going to do that. I'm not known on the internet as the don't play scales guy for nothing. This is going to be a perfect example of introducing you to the concept of lead guitar without using scales. What we are going to use are notes within chords. So check this out. Let's say we're vamping two chords. Let's say a G chord and an A minor chord. Let's say we're just going back and forth between those two chords. That's what we have to work with. But rather than learning some scales that will fit between those two chords, what we're going to do is look at the chords themselves as guideposts to not only giving us a starting point with playing lead guitar, but the right notes that will sound good 100% of the time. So if we were to take a G chord, for example, right? But let's adapt it to its bar chord shape. This is going to be particularly helpful for us with the leads. If you were to take a G bar chord, right, and then just take the bottom three notes, right, making up a little triad here, which would be 4th fret on the G string, and then your first finger bars the 3rd fret on B and high E. So these three notes right here, this little triad, this little fraction of the full bar chord, this is going to be what we're going to work with when we're playing some lead, right? So check this out. If we were to just take those three notes, so instead of strumming them, we're just going to play them individually, or arpeggiating it, right, where we're breaking up the chord into its individual notes, we can now use those three notes for when we're soloing. So check this out. If we play the G chord, for example, and then we use just the bottom three notes of that chord, and we break them up, that's going to be our starting point with playing some leads. But of course we're going to finesse it a little bit, right? We're going to add a little bit of pizzazz to these notes, so we're not just playing them statically, right? So if I were to play a G chord, I could do something like this. That's a totally valid lead line, right? And all I did was I just slid to that 4th fret on the G string. You can slide from the 2nd fret to the 4th fret. And then I played the 3rd fret on high E. Then went back to the 4th fret on G. And then played the 3rd fret on the B string. That right there, we're not using a particular scale or a particular scale pattern to get us there, we're using the chord. That's not to say that, we couldn't say those notes are part of a scale. They absolutely are, but we're not thinking in terms of those scale patterns, right? Because that kind of gives us more information than we really need to get a proper point across, right? That right there is a perfectly valid musical idea. And you don't have to do it just like that, you can do something like this. There's all kinds of different combinations you can approach those notes. You don't even have to use all three. You can just go, right? That's a very common, line done in a lot of leads. And then you can do something like, yeah, there's like so many different options. And with little things like slides, vibrato, you can add some flavor to it. Now if we were to take the 2nd chord, right, A minor, but adapt it to its bar chord shape right here, we're going to take the bottom three notes, right? Take the bottom triad here, which is just going to be barring the 5th fret on the G, B, and high E strings. And what we have there are our three notes that we can draw from when we're playing over the A minor chord in the progression, right? So we're vamping back and forth between G and A minor. So it's going to be something like that. So you can think about this. When you're listening to the G chord being played, you have these notes, right? Those are going to work 100% of the time because those are notes in the G chord, right? We have a B note, a D note, and a G note, right? Notes that make up a G chord. And then right here, we have a C, we have a, what is that? That's an E, so C, E, A, which make up an A minor triad. So anytime you hear the A minor chord, then you can apply those notes, right? So you just want to keep that in mind. This is kind of introducing you to a concept called playing over changes, when you're playing lead while taking into account the chord changes that are happening. So I happen to have a little loop of these two chords. I'm going to go ahead and flick that on, and then I'm going to show you how we can use these two little triads to make some valid lead lines. Check this out. So right there, I was just kind of going back and forth between those two triads, connecting the dots, listening, right, to what chords were being played so I can match those up. So I would kind of stay in the neighborhood of the G triad over the G chord and then shift over to the A minor triad, right? And then that was more than enough to actually make a passable solo, right? Simple, but it totally qualifies as lead guitar playing, right? And it actually sounded a little bit more interesting. It sounded more musical because what I was doing was following, right, each chord with, and I was making sure to deliberate on what notes I was playing to make sure that they matched with the chord that I was hearing, right? But we don't have to stop there. We can actually expand these two triads to a new position. In fact, let's do that. Why not? We're going to now bring it over to a position here, the same G triad, same notes, but in a different order right over here, right? Which would be, so you might recognize this. This looks like a D chord. It's the exact same shape, only we're shifting it up here. So your first finger is going to be on the 7th fret of the G string, third finger is on 8th fret of B, and then first finger is going to be on the 7th fret of high E. And what we have here is another G triad. We have a D note, a G note, and a B note. Right? Whereas here we had B, D, and G. Same notes, different order. There's our new G triad. And then now we have our new A minor triad, which is going to be second finger on the 9th fret of G. Then third finger is going to be on the 10th fret of B. First finger is going to be on the the 8th fret of high E. So we have these little chord parallels going on right here, but they're going to be the perfect guideposts for playing more lead guitar. So I was kind of weaving those triads together, trying to make it flow. Wasn't trying to be flashy or really even going too hard on being very expressive, but it was just to demonstrate how you can kind of move back and forth with those triads, and you have more than enough to work with to do a passable solo. And it's a lot of fun to actually think to yourself, so we have the G chord, that happens first, right? And then we can anticipate that the A minor's coming. So we keep that in mind, so when we're sticking with a G triad, whether it's this one or this one, we know that A minor's coming, so we're gonna get ready and gear up for it and then just shift over to the appropriate triad, right? Whether it's this or this. And we're going to kind of use each of those notes in the triads as kind of like landing points, right? So we can know that if we're gonna do something like this, so I'm trying to think about, right, and anticipate the chords, and also just keep in mind that what I'm doing here is, like I said, weaving together those triads and following along with the chords, hence playing over the changes. And even if you're not playing over a loop or a backing track, let's say you're just playing solo, right? You can start by playing that first chord, set the stage, right? Then play that lead line. All right, then play the next chord, and and then play the appropriate triad thus, you know. You really can set the set the tone here, right? Literally and figuratively, as far as what the ears perceive when they're hearing. You're playing those two chords, and they're hearing those triads. You're kind of keeping the flow of those chords going, as opposed to just trying to weave them together with scales. Because with scales, you have a bunch of additional notes outside of the notes within the chord that could potentially, if you're not already comfortable playing lead guitar, you could potentially get lost or find yourself in the habit of just mechanically playing through the scales and not really being as musical as you could be. When you're just focusing on those triads, you're being musical automatically, right? And you're limiting yourself for good reason, because it doesn't require a lot of notes to make music. Look at B.B. King, right? And then you're also, you're never playing a wrong note so long as you're sticking to the appropriate triad for the appropriate chord. So as you're getting comfortable with this, and it's going to take some time, right? You can start by just playing through the triads over the chords just to get used to it, right? Something like this. Right? Start there, just get familiar with it, get comfortable with it, and then you can start coming up with creative ideas to weave those triads together. You can find like ways to connect them, right? So you can do something like this. See, I just moved to a note that's within the next triad. Even if you're just doing single notes. Right, so you don't have to go in order of the triads, like, right? You don't have to ascend and descend, because then you'd fall into the same habit if you were learning a scale pattern, right? But again, connect the dots, right? You have a note like this, that's in this first triad, and then a note here, it's in the next one. So you can just go like this. Simple, but gets the point across. Yeah. Right, so just find random ways to connect the dots, right? Weave those triads together. And that's really where the music is. And imagine where you're gonna go from here. Once you get comfortable with this idea and you start expanding your horizons, you're gonna go into it with the foundation of playing musically. So you're not gonna fall into that trap of just playing scales up and down in a most unmusical, uninspiring kind of way. And to be perfectly honest, I wish this lesson right here was my first lesson in playing lead guitar. I can guarantee you I'd be 10 times the guitar player I am today, and I'd be way more music-minded, which is something I'm continuing to strive for and get caught up on. And speaking of which, I actually have just the thing that's going to take you to that next level now that we've gone through this lesson together. You remember that free gift I was telling you about? Well, got it right here. It's a free copy of my fretboard conveyor belt method. This has helped thousands of guitar players learn how to play blazing solos all over the fretboard in any key with comfort and with confidence. So be sure to click here to claim your copy or check the link in that description box. And with that, I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. I'm Eddie with Guitar Mastery Method, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.